Hey guys, just coming at you with the video. I'm here to tell you about some of the cheapest decks. They're the most competitive in this format. Um, kind of also going to be some of the ones that are probably going to be expected to top a lot this new format with a lot of the changes and stuff like that that have happened to at the start of the September ban list, with like Heavy Storm and stuff being banned. There's a lot of decks that are expected to be top decking more now. Well, not top decking, but I'm topping tournaments and stuff like that now. And there's a lot of decks that are very cheap that you can pick up that are pretty much all set to go, ready to go, pretty much just as is. And I'm going to start getting into those now. One of the things that I really have been playtesting lately has been Cloudians. They have a lot of potential. Pretty good cheap deck to build. Um, they are extremely fun to try, and they are definitely along the lines some of the biggest troll cards, but also extremely fun because they can't be disturbed by battle, and if you have Sanctuary of the Sky on the field, you don't take any battle damage, and it just is a big troll. And I'm actually looking forward to hopefully people being able to play Cloudians this format and topping with Cloudians now that you can actually run a bit more back row support because Heavy Storm is gone. The only thing I have to really worry about is MSTs and stuff like that, so just carry plenty of useless stuff, carry a lot of back row that hopefully your opponent's not going to always get over. Another deck that actually is coming back to really good potential is Agents. I'm happy about this because of the fact that their Agent of Earth, Agent of Creation Earth, is actually coming back to 3. No, sorry, not Agent of Creation, it's Agent of Mystery Earth. Yeah, Mystery. But it's coming back to 3, so you're going to have a few searches, and you're going to have 3 main tuners that you can use with your Shine Balls or stuff like that. And it's also a pretty cheap deck. You can pretty much build the entire deck out of a structure deck. Basically, Master Hyperion is their boss monster, mixed with Archlord Christia, and you got yourself a very strong deck. Very, very strong, solid, extremely cheap deck because you don't really have much of a extra deck. Like, you have Gachi, Daigusto Phoenix, like stuff like that. And I mean, Daigusto Phoenix is a little bit on the expensive side, but other than that, it's a pretty good cheap deck, easy to build. And it's easy to obtain the cards because it all pretty much comes in one structure deck. Next is Six Samurais. They are a very powerful, very fast archetype, as we all know. However, they did get hit in this format with their Gateway of the Six Samurai being banned, so they're going to be a little bit slower. However, there are players like me who have been playing Six Samurais without Gateway, who can use the deck just as efficiently without needing that Gateway, and it works out just fine. I mean, you can't instantly go into that first turn lock like always, but you can still pretty much get there and achieve your goal pretty easily. And most of the entire deck is obtainable because it all comes in a structure deck as well. Pretty easy to get your hands on. You might have to go out your way a little bit to search for Asceticism to Six Samurai to get your special summons off. But other than that, most of the cards come in the Six Samurai structure deck, which you can pick up very easily. You will have to, unfortunately, pay some money for Shien because Shien doesn't come in the structure deck, sadly, but you do get Shadow of the Six Samurai Shine as your boss monster for the deck. This archetype is going to be a little bit more of one of the expensive ones. It is Bujins, but they definitely have a lot of potential this format. However, we all know that without Yamato, the deck is pretty much useless. And Yamato itself is a $43 card according to a TCG player. So it's pretty expensive for Yamato, and you absolutely have to have 3. You have to have Crane, but Bujingi Crane is extremely cheap. But Bujins have a lot of potential. They essentially have 4 Honest in the deck. You play Honest, and you have 3 of the Bujingi Crane, so you have a lot of hand traps naturally. I mean, you also have Quillen and Turtle, which Quillen destroys face-up cards, and Turtle that stops the cards from being targeted, but you can also play things like Vivid Knight, that when your Yamato is targeted, you can banish your Yamato and special summon Vivid Knight. instead, and then the mono will come back during your standby phase, yada yada yada. So Bujins have a lot of potential. You can also play like Ghost Ship and go into some rank 5 stuff with like Cyber Dragons. A very good overall powerful deck. And they're definitely going to be the ones to top. They have their own sync. They have their own XYZ monsters, Susanoo, and another one, and they are pretty strong. But I don't know if it's worth the money. Brotherhood of the Fire Fist Bear. The Fire Fists have definitely been a strong archetype since they were introduced. Some of the best ones being the rabbit builds that use Force Raider and Genewolf Warwolf, because primarily they're all Beast Warriors, and you can just basically loop your plays around with it. But with Rabbit being limited to one, we'll be seeing less of those builds, and you're going to be seeing a lot of the 3-4 axis Fire Fist builds that run Coach Soldier Wolfbark. And Wolfbark is amazing because you can special summon a level 4 Fire Beast Warrior type monster from your graveyard in defense position, so it's extremely good. But its effects are negated, but you still can go for your Tiger King. You still can go for your XYZ plays. You can loop it around and do some cool stuff. But you're going to be seeing a lot of that. But they did get hit with Spirit getting hit down to 1, so you're not going to be seeing the synchro loop around as much anymore, because it's going to be a lot harder for them to pull off and do. Gadgets, I have the feeling, are going to be very strong in this format because of the fact that they have support like Tin Goldfish. When you normal summon it, special summon a level 4 monster from your hand. So you basically would special summon like your green Gadget, you search your red Gadget. And then you overlay, and if you use like Gear Digit X, you can search for another card. Pretty efficient. I mean, they still work well with, Machina Fortress and the Machina Engine, and it's still definitely a very reliable deck here today, but I don't like the fact that people are running Kage and Redox Dragon or Pebbles in it. I don't think it's a good idea, because I like the Solidarity builds, and with Kage and Redox, you can't get that off. I know the deck is pretty much faster, but I don't like it. It doesn't suit my style, but it's a very cheap deck, and overall, you don't really do a lot of synchroing. You XYZ with it significantly, so they'll be playing XYZ. The XYZ monsters can be cheap, and they can be expensive depending on what you're going for, but overall, the main deck is pretty cheap, and the extra deck, you don't entirely need the extra deck if you just play the right cards. Dragon Plants. Dragon Plants are going to be among one of the more expensive decks, and they are definitely going to be one of the more top-tier decks in this format. I've seen a lot of Dragon Plant players, and I gotta say, it is one of the most extreme decks I have seen so far in the meta, this format and last format, simply for the fact that with the baby dragons going down to banned, I mean, you pretty much only have the big dragons left to play on. So people are using them with the plant engine, and it's absolutely an OP synchro spam build. And I have to admit, it's a very good idea, but there's no competition against that style of deck. It's almost impossible to beat. I've tried multiple times, and you almost can't get over it. And it's a fairly significantly expensive deck. I mean, not getting the dragons themselves, but getting the extra deck required for this kind of deck is pretty expensive. So if you really want to be adventurous, I mean, I guess you can spend the money on this, but it's not recommended by me. Blackwings are definitely to be topping hard this format with the use of 3 Black Whirlwind. They're definitely going to be topping a lot, and they're going to have a lot of search power. It's still a good thing, I guess, that Gale is still at 3, because otherwise, with Black Whirlwind being at 3, you basically have, you could triple Armor Master. And let's face it, we don't want to do that. That is just too OP. But Blackwings are going to be topping. They're a very cheap they're a very cheap deck. The cards are pretty cheap. They don't cost a whole lot, so it's easy to pick yourself up a Blackwing deck. Archfiends. Archfiends are definitely going to be one of the best topping decks, I think, in my opinion. One of my friends is actually experimenting Archfiends with Box of Friends, and It is a pretty cool, crazy combo that he's developed, and as you can hear, I have a lot of PMs coming in on DM at the moment. I don't know why I'm getting spammed. But Archfiend is a pretty cheap deck. Well, it'll be a pretty cheap deck. They've got a lot of new support, and you can combine them with Dark Worlds, and they work fine. You can combine them with Fableds, and they'll work pretty well too. There's a lot of things you can actually combine Archfiends with, and they'll be a pretty good, significantly stable deck. Another one of the very cheap decks that you can pretty much build the entire deck just out of the structure decks as Dark Worlds. They have their own spell support that draws and discards and stuff like that, and they all work off discarding, so why not? And then they have their big boss monster Grapho, which pops a card when discarded, and then you can just return a Dark World monster from your hand, well, from your field to your hand, and special summon back Grapho. You can have a Grapho on the field and bring it back for Grapho, and then just recycle your Graphos. I do that a lot, and it's very good recyclement, and your opponent just hates it, and they absolutely hate it so much. But it's a very cheap deck, and you can pretty much build the entire deck out of the structure deck. You don't really need an extra deck at all, but Dark Worlds are going to be a little less powerful because of the fact that Epidemic Virus is getting limited to 1, so you won't have to worry about Epidemic Virus anymore really being much of a thing. Another really cheap, significant deck you can just pretty much pull out of, build the entire deck out of a structure deck. It has to be Light Pulsars. Well, it has to be Chaos Dragons. With Light Pulsar and Dark Flare Dragon being their boss monsters and the entire deck being focused on getting these two out onto the field, just buy 3 structure decks of these. That's like $35 total. You essentially have pulled the entire structure for Chaos Dragons right there, and the only thing you really need to invest in is BLS, which at high you can see BLS is kind of expensive, but other than that, the entire deck is pretty much there. I mean, you can use the rank builds if you want. You don't really have to, and you can still win with just the Dark Flare and Light Pulsar. If you're really wanting a cheap competitive deck, Chaos Dragons is a very good, strong one. Just buy 3 of the structure decks, and you got the entire deck built right there, right in front of you. You don't have to buy the extra deck or anything. Just make sure you buy that BLS to keep it strong. Spellbooks don't count. Spellbooks are not cheap. Another really good cheap deck that I find is actually going to be really useful, I've been playtesting Batterymen and Hunters, so Battery Hunters. I've been playtesting them a lot, and I calculated the deck out, and the entire deck is going to cost like $350 to $400 because the only thing that's really expensive about it really is the extra deck. The entire main deck overall is pretty cheap, and all the cards are significantly cheap, and you won't have to really worry about paying a lot for the entire deck, and it works very fast, and it's a very powerful, fast-paced deck, and you can OTK a lot, and the deck has a lot of potential depending on how you build it. I did a deck profile on my Battery Hunter, so if you guys want to check that out and you want to try it, you can go check the video out on the channel. But I do highly suggest batteries if you want to go for a very cheap and powerful deck. Another kind of cheap deck is Constellars. The builds are pretty simple and pretty cheap. You just got to pretty much build it all out of Hidden Arsenal 7, which you can do, but it's gonna cost a bit to get into Pleiades and Omega to pull them out of the pack. Because you're probably going to end up getting Bahamut and Evil Sarmotheon, which both of these decks are significantly cheap. The only thing really expensive about Evil Swarms is the Ophion. Ophion is at like $23 right now in high, so it's kind of expensive, but it's not too expensive to the point where it's out of your reach to be able to buy it. Like spellbooks are, for example, out of your range to buy them because of how expensive they are. Dragon Ruler. The actual true Dragon Ruler decks are out of your way and too expensive because of the triple Big Eye and the triple Jaga Socks and stuff like that, and Lad. Other than that, these two decks, Constellars and Evil Swarms, they pretty much counter each other, and they're a very good top tier deck, and they're very simple to use, and even if you combine them together, you can make them a very strong, significant Chaos style build too, with the fact that you have Evil Swarms that are dark, Constellars that are light, so it's actually useful with like Chaos Dragons. You can make like Chaos Dragon freaking Constellar Evil Swarms, which I have tried, and it does work pretty well. A little slow in my opinion, but it does work pretty well. You can just mess around with that, try doing that. Another thing I forgot to mention is Elemental Heroes. The deck is easy to build and pretty cheap to make. However, Stratos got hit, so Stratos isn't a very good example to show, but like, A Hero Lives is actually, A Hero Lives isn't all that cheap like it used to be. But A Hero Lives is going to be really good support for Elemental Heroes, and I mean their search spell card, Emergency Call, is coming to 3. So Elemental Heroes, once again, is going to be really good in this new format like they were last one, with Chain Beat. Not Chain Beat. Chain Beat is different. Hero Beat decks were actually really good last format, and they're going to top again really good this format because, once again, Heavy Storm is gone. They're going to be running a lot of traps, so be prepared for those Hero Beat decks. Those are probably some of the strongest lockdown decks there really is. That, I mean, they can go into ridiculous monsters, like they can go into Excalibur, then Detach, go into, like, this guy here, Absolute Zero. I mean, they can do crazy things. They can even play into, like, Masked Hero Acid with the Bubble Man. They have wicked combo plays, so they're a pretty cheap deck overall to build, and a very, very, very strong one at that to play and pull off. They topped a lot. They topped over Mermails. Mermails aren't cheap, by the way, so just telling you, Megalo is still up there. Vegas is still up there. Jagasak is still up there. Abyssos is still up there, kinda. But these are pretty much the main decks that you're gonna. These are gonna be the cheapest decks really that you can buy that are going to be competitive in this new upcoming format. If you have any suggestions of other decks that are pretty cheap that you can actually build that are very competitive this format, please let me know. Leave a comment down below in the comment section, and I will get to it, and I will, if you want, I will specifically talk about that particular archetype and stuff like that. If you guys are interested, just let me know. Peace out, guys.